Welcome to the Music Box, welcome to Music Box of Horrors, and welcome to January Giallo. Quite a grand finale that we have here for you. My name's Will, I'm part of the programming team for Music Box of Horrors, along with Ryan Ostrike and Katie Reif. And I've seen a lot of you here this whole month for January Giallo. And we wanted to save something so special for you tonight, and thank you guys so much for turning out for it. I'm a little emotional. This is a crazy night, I won't lie. So I'm going to thank some people before we get to it. First up, I want to thank the Music Box staff, everybody out there. Please tip them lots when you go to the bar or concession stand. They work very hard to make these things happen. Next up, I want to thank our year-long sponsor, Shudder. If you love Giallo films, they've got lots of them streaming. Check that out. I also want to thank our other sponsor for the evening, the Italian Cultural Institute of Chicago. Give it up to them. Okay. Sorry, everybody. This is just amazing. Y'all have overwhelmed me. So the person who created a thing called Cinematic Void and a thing called January Giallo is a man named Jim Branscombe, and he has come all the way from Los Angeles tonight. So please put your hands together for him.
Thank you, Will. Will Morris, everyone. As I've said previously, I used to work with Will in Los Angeles, so it's always an honor to come out here. And this is the second year I've been out here for January Giallo. We did Tightrope was the last time I was here. A little bit of a different thing. But I want to thank a couple of people. I want to thank Ryan at the Music Box. Ryan, thank you. Give it up for Ryan. Because it is really hard to run a repertory new movie cinema, especially a grand old theater like this one. And I love seeing this because old movie houses are the best movie houses. So give it up. I want to give a special shout out to Stephanie Sachs. I don't know where Stephanie is, but Stephanie was instrumental in helping make this all happen. Give it up for Stephanie. I'm not going to say much because I don't need to say anything because you're here for one person. So please get on your feet and give a standing ovation for the maestro, Sergio Martino!
Thank you.
Let's take a seat, Sergio. And by the way, this is Alice, who will be the interpreter tonight. She's does an excellent job. Give it up for Alice. Sergio, since we did this in Los Angeles, I'm going to make it slightly different this time. But I'm going to start with a question. Just, who here has not seen Torso tonight? Oh. So, don't boo people. I don't like when people boo people for not seeing movies because they're going to be seeing it in this awesome fucking theater tonight for their first time. That's way better than seeing it on the crappy VHS I had to see it on. So, I'm old, sorry. But anyway, Sergio, could you talk about how Torso, the film, came about originally?
L'idea di Torso è nata ovviamente dalla mia volontà di fare dei film gialli, possibilmente con delle meccaniche non abituali, e quindi mi viene l'idea, suggestionato anche da un film americano uscito qualche tempo prima.
So the idea behind Torso comes from the desire to create something slightly unusual, or at least with an unusual mechanics to it. And in particular, it was inspired by an American movie.
E un film americano si chiama Terrore cieco, I remember? E quindi scrissi questa storia e casualmente un produttore che era Cervi, giovane produttore italiano, lo presentò a Carlo Ponti. Io stavo girando un film a Padova e mi telefonarono che volevano mandare avanti questo progetto.
And the name of the movie was Blind Terror. So initially I conceived this movie and then things kind of all came together. There was the producer, Carlo Ponti, that came about and said, well, we now have the possibility of making it happen, and I was working on another movie, but then it all came together very quickly.
La storia in realtà, il titolo originale è 5 ragazze sole, 5 women alone. E ovviamente con lo svolgimento della sceneggiatura credo che soprattutto il valore di quel film è per la qualità, c'è la quantità di sequenze quasi tutte in silenzio, non c'è che si parla perché c'è una meccanica che chi non ha visto ancora il film è meglio che non la scopra e che ovviamente è determinata dalla necessità di non poter parlare.
So the movie is quite interesting in its way of having been produced because towards the end of the movie there's a really long sequence which I'm not going to spoil, but it's quiet, it's silent sequence. So there are some elements that are particularly interesting in this production.
E quindi di conseguenza realizzai questo film e l'idea di Carlo Ponti di renderlo più internazionale ambientandolo a Perugia, dove c'è un'università internazionale, dove ci sono anche moltissimi ragazzi americani. Anche recentemente, 4-5 anni fa, c'è stato un delitto in quella città e ovviamente spesso e volentieri si è fatto riferimento al mio film perché sembrava quasi fosse la stessa dinamica, però reale, di un omicidio in quella città, che i giornali ne parlarono anche in questo senso.
So Carlo Ponti's idea was then made into a movie, which has an element of surprise in the sense that it's set in a city in Italy called Perugia, and that's an international city. A lot of university students go there. And it was just, a coincidence that years later, after the movie had come out, years later, an actual murder happened in the city, a worldwide known murder Curtis, and many newspapers created that association. It was pure chance, but the fact that it had some kind of resurgence due to that episode, that element, it definitely made it international in a way.
Quindi di conseguenza il film fu realizzato anche con attori non solo italiani e soprattutto questa ambientazione internazionale ha dato forse la possibilità di essere amato anche all'estero. Vedendo questa sala piena mi sembra che sia anche una conferma di tutto questo.
And so the fact that there was an international element to it, and the fact that the cast was not only Italian, there were people from abroad as well, that created some international interest. And I can tell by the fact that this room is full nowadays that it was a success in its way.
Next, okay. You're directing this, so I go by you. You worked on the script with one of your frequent collaborators, Ernesto Gastaldi. Can you talk about what the writing process was with him on this movie?
Sì, sicuramente io ho avuto sempre un rapporto particolare con Ernesto. Io sulla traccia di una mia storia, quindi che era personale, e ovviamente in realtà la prima storia era molto più circoscritta ai personaggi, però avendola ampliata con quelle altre morti che ci sono nella storia, si sono create delle storie parallele che hanno dato forse anche più sapore al film e anche e soprattutto la difficoltà di individuare chi era il vero assassino. Che non voglio dire adesso perché non l'ha visto, però insomma.
So obviously there's personal history between myself and Ernesto, which created that collaboration, but also the fact that we wanted to add some elements to the movie, which again I'm not going to spoil for you guys because some of you have not seen it. But initially it's not just one murder that happens. There's a few elements that come together, and the fact that you don't know who it is until the very end is definitely a pivotal element in our collaboration.
Excellent. When you approach a movie as a director, as you're working on the script, do you get ideas on how you want to shoot it, or did you ever do storyboards or shot lists, or did you always just kind of run on instinct? Because your style in all your movies is very kinetic. There's lots of moving camera, there's zooms, the way you frame and lay stuff out. Is it just instinct, or do you just plan it out in your head? Or?
I never did sorry before the storyboard. I never got it. Every morning I go there and aspetta, I sto in Italia. Ogni giorno praticamente ero anche suggestionato dal clima, dalle atmosfere, da come vedevo quell'attore, forse a girare una sequenza in modo diverso dall'altra. Non credo di essere un genio del cinema, però tutto sommato ho avuto forse dentro di me questa capacità di privilegiare non tanto le parole ma le storie. Infatti questo film ha gli ultimi 20 minuti che sono muti per l'80%, con grande risparmio sul doppiaggio.
So, he was mentioning what you also had, that he was never using storyboards, right? So I never use storyboards because I don't think I'm a movie genius, but what I think is that I had the privilege of being able to go on set every day and make decisions and be flexible and adaptable and say, okay, based on how the actor is today, or maybe the scene, or maybe the weather, these things could influence the way I frame it and the way I want to create it. And the fact that also this situation led me to have a movie that has almost 20 minutes of silence towards the end, 80% of that is silent. Well, it created for some good situations. We saved a lot of money on dubbing, for example.
Another thing I want to talk about, this movie has a really incredible score by the DeAngelis brothers. Could you talk about how they became the ones who scored your movie? Because you have great scores in a lot of movies. Bruno Nicolai, you worked with a lot. Nora Rolandi, who did Mrs. Ward, which is playing tomorrow. I hope you guys got your tickets for Mrs. Ward as well.
To answer?
The answer is like how the DeAngelis brothers.
I fratelli De Angeli in realtà l'ho conosciuti con quel film lì. In realtà erano due ragazzi molto giovani che mi furono presentati dal montatore anche mio abituale, che è Eugenio Ravviso, che devo dire, oltre a Giancarlo Ferrando e tanti altri, sicuramente Eugenio Ravviso è stato un mio collaboratore molto, molto importante. Abbiamo anche avuto dei conflitti che lui amava molto tagliare, quindi di rendere il film con più ritmo, e quindi proprio anche quella conflittualità ha cercato forse di migliorare quello che ho fatto.
So I met the brothers through another collaborator of mine, Eugenio Laviso, who was a recurring person that I worked with, especially because we used to have disagreements. And I like having disagreements with people that I work with because, for example, he was very into cutting. He wanted to have very short sequences. And the fact that we continued to work together towards these things, well, it allowed me to have a very fruitful collaboration with him, as well as the brothers, obviously.
Credo che anche la produzione, io abitualmente avevo fatto parte di tutti i miei primi film con mio fratello, con il quale ovviamente abbiamo avuto una collaborazione per moltissimi anni e abbiamo fatto anche dei buoni successi, insomma non voglio adesso mettermi le medaglie, però diciamo fu una delle prime volte che ho girato con produttori non legati alla famiglia e di conseguenza poi ho anche frequentato altri produttori.
And many of the movies that I directed, actually, I did with my brother at first. He was also a recurring collaborator of mine, and we had some pretty good success. Now, I don't want to, award me any big prizes, but it was okay. It was successful in a way.
Sergio, you're selling yourself short. People love you in your movies. We can do a couple more. So the year Torso came out, you had two other movies released the same year, released in Italy. You had Giovanna Longthigh and The Violent Professionals came out the same year, and they're all distinctly different from each other. I wanted to ask you, did you enjoy changing genres and doing different kind of movies?
Sì, certamente, con la mia natura mi ha sempre visto nella condizione che fare sempre lo stesso genere di film diventasse meccanico. Anche la ricerca dell'inquadratura, tendenzialmente tutti gli stili dei film hanno delle tecniche diverse. Un film comico si gira sul primo piano dell'attore o addirittura sui campi più larghi perché la gestualità è importante. In un film, e poi ci sta anche il problema della luce, un film diciamo solare, quasi sempre la musica è sempre molto totale, invece un film giallo c'è anche dei condizionamenti di poter far arrivare l'attore in quella fascia di luce che lo rende la sequenza anche più credibile, e quindi di conseguenza questo tipo di collaborazioni e questa mia ricerca mi ha sempre dato la voglia di sperimentare con altri generi e quindi di poter passare dalla commedia al film giallo, al film d'azione, ho girato anche dei western nella mia carriera. Ecco, io non avrei mai potuto fare quello che alcuni miei colleghi, anche importanti italiani come Giulio, come Argento, più o meno hanno fatto sempre lo stesso genere di film. Se avessi fatto solo film gialli, forse non avrei avuto quella freschezza che in quegli anni io ho conservato e ho rinnovato. You understand? No.
I understand something, but I've been around you enough now, so.
So in a way, I've always been adaptable and curious, so having different genres was paramount to me, especially because different genres come with different settings, techniques, and possibilities. So for example, say you have a comic movie in place, then you're going to do a lot of close-ups, or maybe the gestures are going to be particularly important. And there comes the lighting, you know, the fact that the light has to be quite cheerful and quite obvious. And repeating the same genre over and over and over again would have been too obvious, too mechanical to me. So in a giallo movie, for example, you have a completely different setting. What you have is, for example, the light needs to come through in a certain way, the angles are different and challenging and they vary. So I could never have done things that other directors then did successfully in their lives, such as Dario Argento. He kept the same genre for throughout his whole career, most of his career. I wanted to do something different, and I even did a Western movie at one point.
Io ho fatto, mi dicono quelli che hanno il conto dei miei film, io ho fatto in Italia 66 film, molti di generi differenti. Ho fatto film in siesta, film western, film gialli, film comici, film sentimentali, quindi di conseguenza sono stato, come si dice in volgarità,